Okay, we're back. We're live. We're at Think Tech Talks. We're doing the SOEST Hour. That stands for the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology at UH Manoa. And today we're going to talk about bringing climate change home. And you'll see what I mean after we get into the subject with Kevin Hamilton, who's the director of the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST, and Yuqing Wang, president of the International, professor. President. Maybe there was a vote, you know, you didn't know. make that professor at the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST. So today we're going to find out what is the International Pacific Research Center. We're going to find out what these guys do and specifically what they do in bringing climate change home and making projections about climate change, which we need to know about. And I think, you know, the university is like our best friend on climate change. Climate change is a real issue here in Hawaii because we're in the middle of nowhere. We're isolated. And things could happen here that would be different than what you would expect elsewhere. We have to make predictions and get a fix on where we are and where we're going to be as far as climate change is concerned. And we are just happy as we can be that the university and specifically SOEST is working on this and sharing their findings with us so we get an idea of what's going on. Otherwise, it's going to hit us on the side of the head. We won't even know what happened yet. So welcome to the show, you guys.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, nice to be here. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go in order of good looks. Kevin, well, tell us about the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST. What is it?
Okay, so it's a research center with about 50 or more PhD level scientists and long-term visitors, and it's a very interesting and unique organization because it was set up as a Japan-U.S. collaboration. Actually originated in a very high-level political arena. So the Gore-Hashimoto Accords of 1997 actually led the governments of both countries to put climate change as a bilateral area of cooperation. And thanks to some very active working-level scientists in Japan and also some people in the University of Hawaii before I was here, the University of Hawaii actually benefited and got support for a jointly funded center. So the Japanese have put over $40 million into this center since its founding in 1997, and it's grown to be a very well-known, I call it the Pacific powerhouse of climate studies. So the focus has been on the Asia-Pacific region, climate variability and climate change, and the issues we concern ourselves with are monsoon circulations, El Nino, tropical cyclones, and more recently we're getting more and more focus on Hawaii and the Pacific Islands in particular.
Yeah, it sounds like you're focusing a lot on storms. Are you also focusing on sea level rise?
So our main expertise is in sort of modeling the motions and the clouds and the atmosphere and also the motions in the ocean. So I'd say that first order, most of us are not concerned with sea level rise, but we have actually one very active group that is considering the particular effects of the winds on local sea level, and also looking at paleoclimate records to look at past climate change and their effects on sea level. So Yuqing and I, our own research is not focused so much on the sea level, which of course is a very important aspect of climate change, but more on the meteorological effects on the winds and the rain and radiation and so on.
So how many people are in the center?
So sitting we have one floor of the big post building, big blue building on campus, and actually I know 78 people can sit on that floor.
That's huge.
And it's almost full at this moment. And so we have some support staff, some secretarial staff, computer support staff, but as I say, probably the order of 50 to 60 PhD level scientists who are about 10 UH faculty, and then more junior researchers and postdocs, plus a number of long-term visitors. We have a lot of visitors, particularly from Japan and other parts of Asia that come.
So you have collaborations with universities, what, in Japan and elsewhere?
Well, we have many collaborations. Our closest partner in Japan is actually JAMSTEC, the Japan Agency for Marine, Earth, Science and Technology, who fund us, and they're sort of the equivalent of NOAA in the United States, at least the scientific research part of NOAA.
Why are they interested in you?
So this is of course a big issue, since we have to renew our agreement with them actually in a couple of months. And I've been very persuasive, I hope, that we provide a lot of advantages to the Japanese. So they like to have a sort of window on the Western and the U.S. Science community, a place they can send their younger scientists to be exposed to how things are done in the U.S. And of course, Hawaii is a very welcoming place for Japanese long-term visitors. So I'd say that, and we have been able to work synergistically with them. So the Japanese JAMSTEC has wonderful facilities. So they have ships and capability of ocean coring, and in particular very high-powered computers that we couldn't possibly have in Hawaii. So we've been helping them analyze some of their very computationally intensive results. And again, we've developed very close collaborations. There's all kinds of advantages for them. So, if they try to distribute data over the internet in convenient ways, they have to face firewall problems because they're a quasi-government agency. So we've actually taken a lot of their data, and we're actually the portal that serves it to the broad public.
To the world.
Yeah,
to the academic world, maybe to the world in general.
To the world in general, yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's shift a little bit. Let me ask you to introduce yourself, Kevin. You can start with the part in Canada.
Right, yes. So I'm originally from Canada, and spent the first third of my life roughly there. And then came to the United States for my PhD, and most of my post-PhD work has been in the United States. And so I was before I moved to Hawaii, I was at Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab, a NOAA lab in New Jersey. And then I guess I figured if I spent the first third of my life where it's much too cold, I would be happy to spend the last third in a place like Hawaii. So 13 years ago I moved to Hawaii and was one of the first faculty in the new center, which seemed like a very intriguing idea back in 2000. 14 years later, it's still very intriguing.
That's great.
But of course now
lost its touch. Eh?
Yes, but I have to say I've had to be director for the last 6 years, so it's been a different view of the center as director. But Yuqing is much more. Still fresh and enthusiastic young scientist.
Yeah, tell us about your background.
We're almost the same age.
Just look a lot younger.
You look younger.
Yeah, tell us about your background. Give us your bio.
Yeah, okay, so I'm Yuqing Wang, and before I joined the International Pacific Research Center, I was a professional officer in Australia, working as a Bureau of Meteorology Research Center. And my main...
What city is that in?
That's in Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne?
Yeah. So it's a government agency. Mm-hmm. And actually I got my PhD in Monash University in Australia. And my major research area is tropical cyclone at the beginning. And later on, after I moved to the IPRC, I focused more on the regional climate modeling and regional climate change studies.
Mm-hmm. And which one of you guys, or maybe both of you guys, is teaching right now? If you're a professor, I always make the assumption you must be a professor teaching, no?
Right. So at this very moment, this term, I'm not teaching, but I was last term.
We can teach today, Kevin.
Yes. And Yuqing is teaching right now, I know.
Yeah.
So what kind of students are there, in the program? Or you teach in SOEST in general? The research center is not a teaching organization. You sort of go into the main body of SOEST and teach there. Is that what happens?
Right. So yeah. So we have joint appointments with the meteorology department. So the meteorology department or the oceanography department handle the academic side, so that enrolling the graduate students and so on. So basically, our appointments are 50-50 between the teaching department and the research center.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What kind of students do you teach? I mean, what are they like coming up? Where do they come from? Are they local? Do they come from other places? What are their... describe them.
Right. So one thing we do is teach the introductory courses to big classes.
In meteorology.
In meteorology, yeah. So Meteorology 101. And there, most of the students are local. They're taking the course, sometimes just to satisfy, some distribution requirement of courses. So it's the introduction to science. And
so that'd be as an undergraduate.
Yes, yeah. And then we have a small majors undergraduate program. So these are people who take many of our courses all the way through the fourth year. And there we have a few local students, typically students from the mainland US, very occasionally international students. Then in graduate school, we have a big program, both master's and PhD. We might have, 30, 35 students total there in the department. And there we have some students from the mainland, and occasionally local students, but mainly students from Asia at this point.
Interesting. Are you full up, or do you have seats available?
We always have room for good students.
Okay, well, maybe I'll
yes,
talk to you later.
Shake. Well, I don't know if you want to join, but
That'd
if
be
you,
a different story entirely.
Yeah. But if you know of any students, undergraduate or graduate, we always are looking for good students.
So, a question occurs to me, and this, not to dwell too much about the students, but are these students coming through the system at SOEST and in the Research Center, are they trained sort of on a global science basis, or are they focused on the special environment here in Hawaii? I mean, is it Pacific centric, or can I use what I learn anywhere in the world?
So basically, there's a fairly standard curriculum in meteorology or oceanography that people have to cover, and so people can take their degrees here and take a weather forecasting job or going to graduate school anywhere in the world, basically. Of course, being in Hawaii, we have special focus, so we try to emphasize that as much as we can. But I would say 95% of the curriculum here is going to be the same as if you were at the University of Chicago or Princeton University or anywhere else. It's a fairly standard.
It's global science.
Yeah.
And the other thing I just wanted to ask is that is Hawaii a special place as far as SOEST and climate change and research, into meteorology? Is Hawaii special? I mean, if the Japanese want to come here and fund you, they must think it's special. Right. But academically, is it special?
Right. So I would say across SOEST, which covers all aspects of ocean earth science, there are many people who are here because of the very special natural gifts we have here. So the volcanoes, their location in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, easy access to coral reefs, out of the Coconut Island. So there are many sort of these wonderful gifts of nature. And of course, in astronomy, we have unique possibility of sighting telescopes here. So that's what's really led the school to be able to grow to its very large size relative to the university here. Now, of course, we're doing theoretical work, so in principle, this could be done anywhere. And what's made Hawaii a focus for this and made the IPRC possible is the interest of the Japanese and our other Asian partners. So it's almost the cultural and sort of cultural environment of Hawaii that's made our center possible, and the interest of the Japanese and other Asians to come here.
It's a cloth mother for them. They like to be here because it's an easy place to be.
Yeah, and so we are taking advantage of the Hawaii is the crossroads of the Pacific, and many aspires to be the crossroads of the Pacific in many areas. And I'd say in theoretical climate science, because of the history and our close connections with Japan, we've been able to realize that. But for most of the school, they're doing field work, and they're in Hawaii because of the special conditions, special physical conditions.
Those I think it's one boat, something Kanaloa, the Oiwi Kanaloa.
KOK
Kanaloa.
So we've SOEST has two big boats.
Two.
Yeah.
And those are SOEST boats. But do you get to go on those boats?
Well, again, we're doing theoretical work. Some of our colleagues, do mostly theoretical work, but a little bit of field work. So some of our colleagues have gone on those boats. And but again, most of our field work that we've done has actually been on JAMSTEC boats sailing out of Japan. And because JAMSTEC has their own navy, basically they've got 8 enormous, some of them absolutely enormous world-class boats.
Yeah, so there's an exchange on that.
Yeah.
They come, you go there, and so forth.
Yeah.
But your primary tools, then, I take it, are data that you get from maybe other agencies, weather agencies, NOAA, for example.
Yeah.
By the way, Andy Weiner, Andy Weiner,
sure.
he's here. He was here for Brian Schatz's headquarters opening last week, and I saw him. I said hi.
Yep.
Great guy, but he's not with NOAA anymore. He moved somewhere else.
Is he with the congressional staff? Or?
Used to be.
Yep.
Spent a lot of time there. Anyway, but mostly going to get data from organizations, collect weather data, meteorological, and then you're gonna make models using computers, little computers or big computers.
Well, we try to use the biggest computers we can, and that's sort of another story how we can find.
They're going to cover that.
Yeah, we'll cover that later, and some developments in the university that are interesting. So so the results I'll show here later today actually were run sort of on computers we found here and there. Now, in addition to that, our JAMSTEC colleagues have access to the world's fastest computers, basically devoted to earth science, and so we like to collaborate with them on certain other projects. And again, they provide the computational firepower and the basic data. We typically are helping them analyze that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, Kevin, Yuqing, and just a minute or so, and we'll be right back. And after we come back, I'd like to ask you about those projects. What are they? And how you? I'm going to talk science.
Sure.
That's my favorite thing. I don't understand what you're saying, but maybe somebody out there does. Okay, that's Kevin Hamilton, director of the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST, and Yuqing Wang, who's a professor at the center. This is Think Tech Talks on the SOEST Hour here on a given Monday, and we're talking about bringing climate change home, and you'll see what I mean when we come back from this break. Castle and Cook, Hawaii. Investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state. Collateral Analytics. Empowering the real estate industry to make better informed property investment decisions. The Foreign Trade Zone. Bringing the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone programs to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. Galen Ho, a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company. Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island. The Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, incorporating diverse perspectives to design a flexible and forward-looking energy strategy. Hawaii Energy, the state's energy and efficiency program created to help Hawaii's residents and businesses adopt a clean energy lifestyle. Hawaii Gas, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Hawaii Pacific Health, bringing technology and teamwork together to transform healthcare in Hawaii. The High Tech Development Corporation, attached to DBED, is the state's leading technology agency. The Scheidler Family Foundation, supporting educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including Think Tech. Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks on the SOEST Hour on Monday, bringing climate change home with Kevin Hamilton and Yuqing Wang, both of the International Pacific Business Center. So I'd like to get into some of your projects, your favorite projects. Can you tell us, what some of them are, and you have some graphics you can show people what you're doing and how you do it, how you spend your time. Yeah?
Right. So of course, across the center, and again, people like Yuqing, we're looking at a lot of different aspects of climate variability and change. So we're doing studies of how the South Asian monsoon will change under climate, expected global warming, say, for the next century. And issues like how El Nino might change and so on. But specifically, my collaboration with Yuqing, and again, Yuqing is really the intellectual driver here, the real expert in regional climate modeling. We've been trying to take global projections of climate that are being done at many centers throughout the world, and try to model things in more detail over Hawaii, which has a special special challenges because of the very steep and tall topography here. So we need to go to extremely high resolution to model present-day climate.
But you already have a modeling at a low resolution. You start with a modeling at a low resolution.
Right.
And
So
where do you get that from?
okay, so there's probably about 20 centers throughout the world, typically government centers, that are developing global coupled atmosphere ocean climate models. And the standard experiment is to run them for present-day conditions, for 100 years, and then try to impose the carbon dioxide concentration increases, other aspects you think are going to change, say, over the next century, and look at conditions later in the century. So this is all fine, and that's, again, we have a lot of interest in those kinds of global experiments at our center. But one problem is given the computational demands, those models will typically resolve, what one square in that model, where things are sort of considered to be uniform, might be 100 miles by 100 miles. Mm-hmm. So such models.
It's horizontal. It's not three-dimensional.
Yeah. So the model's three-dimensional. So again, in the vertical, the discretization might be a few hundred meters.
Okay.
But in the horizontal, you got to cover the whole globe. So something like 100 kilometers, 100 miles would be the horizontal resolution of these models. Which means Hawaii typically gets ignored completely, and they don't even know there's any land here, or it might be like one or two little bumps, 20 feet above the sea level.
All of Hawaii is 1,500 miles, the whole thing,
right.
Including water.
Yeah. So one the big island might just appear as kind of a slightly raised bump in one big square. So this is obviously inadequate. We know, anyone who lives here knows you can walk for 20 minutes and be in a very different climatic zone. So we have a very big challenge, which is to try to model the climate on very fine scales. And
can you stop for a minute,
sure.
Kevin? What do you mean model? What are you putting in? What are you getting out when you make a model?
Right. So we're taking the governing, the physics equations that describe the physics of the atmosphere, and actually constructing sort of a parallel version of the atmosphere. So this is how you make a short-term weather forecast. You take a model that sort of shows how the flow evolves in time in the future, and you start with the best guess of today's conditions, and you march it forward. And typically, you might be marching 30 seconds at a time. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a short-term forecast, you might march that for a day or two, look at the conditions, and base your projection of rain.
Time-lapse photography.
Right. For climates, we need to do much longer, longer integrations, we call them. We have to run the model for a longer time. So the kinds of things we're doing is actually looking at 20 years of sort of near present-day conditions, and 20 years that represent what we think will be conditions at the end of the century.
What's the interval if you're talking 20 years as the total span of the project? It's not going to be 30 seconds.
So the model itself might be being updated every 30 seconds through 20 years. Right. So of course you need to do this on a very fast computer. You have that 30-second update has to take place in far less than a second for us to be able to go to 20 years, because we only have a few real-time months to do one of these runs. Let's say. Yeah. So is that clear?
Well, one question is. So you have these snapshots, right? Mm-hmm. In the short model you described, mm-hmm. And that's a 30-second snapshot, right. Or every 30 seconds. So now you have a 20-year model. What's the duration of the snapshot for a 20-year model?
So again, we're actually updating the conditions every 30 seconds.
So you're still doing 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh,
so no, okay. Of course. So of course we can't save all that data. We typically save some of the data every hour, mm-hmm. or every day. And then take that as the basis for computing things like long-term mean changes, which is what I'll be able to show you here today. Okay,
all right. So now, when you have a model, when it's all ready, and you put all the data in about how your algorithms, your formulae, are changing things because of various factors coming and going. What does it look like? I mean, what's the deliverable on one of these models? It's a computer program, a series of snapshots, or what?
The model itself is a program, it's just a set of instructions to the computer, It's ours are typically written in Fortran, and some of these models, some of the global models, can be 50,000 lines of Fortran. So if somebody's coded 50,000 sequential instructions.
Is that a lot?
It's a lot. So the models typically, nobody probably starts from scratch anymore to write their own model. Start from take at least parts of things that have already been developed. So if you started from scratch, and Yuqing actually came closest probably of anyone recently to making his own model from scratch. And you're talking about a very talented guy like Yuqing coding
in Fortran.
Yes.
You probably would spend months coding a regional model.
Yeah,
and
years.
even a brilliant guy like Yuqing will have to take some things from other pre-existing models. So it's an organic process that's been being developed in many different centers. The model we start with here for our fine resolution simulations is actually what's called a community model. So particularly the U.S. Climate community collaborates on a kind of open source model called WRF, Weather Research and Forecasting Model. And so there's some sort of governing council, but people are invited to submit their own candidates for improvements. So again, Yuqing is
to the code.
Yeah. So if you go to the WRF you can get today, it actually has one option in terms of how the clouds are treated, the motions of the clouds are treated due to Yuqing and his colleagues at IPRC.
Did they name it after you?
Like
when you discover a planet or something?
Yeah, it should be the Yuqing parameterization.
No, that's modified from the existing scheme as well. But the performance is much better than the original scheme.
Oh, good. More efficient.
More efficient and the more realistic in simulating the clouds around the Hawaii Islands. That's very important for the future climate projections.
Yeah. So let me understand one more thing. It's sort of a digression for a moment, but so when you get the model worked out, at least to a point, and you run it as you mentioned, and it takes whatever time it takes, and you watch it. I suppose you watch it running. Can you see it graphically running as it's running the model?
Well, typically it's writing this enormous data files out to disk, and then someone goes in later on and
looks and sees from the disk. Is the disk graphic or is it just numbers?
Well, it's numbers, but we produce pictures from the numbers.
You can make pictures off the numbers.
Yeah,
okay, so now I have it. Okay,
yeah.
I have all the data that was generated by Yuqing's code, and it's over say a 20-year period, and it's about climate change. What do I do with it exactly?
Yes. So at that point, you have to, because the total amount of data, say from the experiments described here, is maybe the order of 8 terabytes, 8 trillion bytes. So it's like Encyclopedia Britannica, times 1,000 or something. So you have to go in and pull out what people actually need to understand. So again, we have, even though we're only saving data every day, let's say, we have an enormous number of kind of individual snapshots, three-dimensional snapshots of the winds, temperatures, and so on. So what people are more interested in might be how the long-term mean rainfall rate at some location changes. So again, you go in with another computer code, analyze these data, and come up with those things, make maps of simplified things. So again, long-term mean change, or long-term mean change for the summer season or the winter season. You can do other fancier things. You can look at the tracks of tropical cyclones as simulated by your model and see how the overall.
So where they are geographically.
Yeah, where statistically they are now and where they might be.
And how they progress, and presumably their intensity, and what kind of what kind of damage they could do at a given location.
Right. Yeah. So
that's pretty serious. So you can go in and you have to query the model. Is that what you do? Or query the data?
Yeah. You take the data and grab it out and just do more mathematical manipulations of it to produce the results.
So if I asked you, this may be an unfair question, but if I asked you, what's the condition going to be like on today's the 17th?
17th of February,
yeah, 17th of February, 2025.
Right. That is not, you cannot answer that question.
I thought it was an unfair question.
Yes, it's not unfair. It's just not answerable.
Okay.
So the atmosphere is chaotic, and that means that what we're trying to do in, say, weather forecasting or climate projections, to take today's conditions and move them forward in time. But in fact, there's a limit to how far you can produce what we call deterministic forecast, a forecast of exactly what's going to happen at a particular time. And that threshold for weather forecasting is maybe about 2 or 3 weeks. So no matter how much effort we put into weather forecasting, you'll never get a really good forecast for 4 weeks from today, exactly what's going to happen in the morning of March 17th, let's say, this year. Okay. So it's an even bigger problem if you ask me to go out to 2025. But what we can predict are sort of average conditions, how the statistics of the atmospheric behavior, the oceanic behavior.
So you can look at it period over time.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the 17th of February 2025, but the year 2025, for example, how are things going to look that year?
No, even 1 year looking at that is not possible. But I can tell you maybe what a 20-year average will look like. Okay, so.
And trends.
Yeah.
Getting
So,
this way, getting that
yes,
way, changing this way, that way.
Yeah. So that the long-term trends, we think, in principle, are predictable. The short-term variations are not predictable in a deterministic fashion.
But that's not to say that you can't do this later. I mean, if you work on this code, if you develop these models, if you get more, the original data is more refined, and your last obtained data is more refined, then presumably as time goes by, within our lifetimes, you'd be able to narrow the point of reference on these things. No?
Right. But there's, again, this is sort of a fundamental discovery in chaotic systems. It's actually due to a famous meteorologist at the Renz at MIT. There's a fundamental limit to how far you can predict. So you'll never be able to specify, you'll never be able to observe the global atmosphere at 1 millimeter scale. It's just, it'll never happen.
Is this something to do with religion?
No. So but the deductions from things like chaos theory are very profound, and they do affect, how predictable the physical world is. Of course, does influence people's ideas about religion and life in general, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm sure you think those thoughts as you work. You have to look at the larger view.
Yes. So, but mostly, I spend my time explaining the implications of chaos theory to people who want to look at our results. And it's a very it's a very sort of subtle aspect, but it's important for people that want to apply the kinds of results that Yuqing and I are generating to practical problems. They need to understand the limits of our ability to predict.
The limits of the science.
Yeah, and it's a very fundamental limit of the kind of system you have. So again, you'll never be able to specify the system globally at some very small scales, and those small scales contaminate the forecast very quickly. So you lose the ability to predict in any possible practical scenario quickly.
Something about Mother Nature.
Yeah.
And mainly I think the uncertainties. We can reduce the uncertainty to some degree, but we never remove the uncertainties.
Yeah,
right. So
but there is a certainty, however, about our breaks.
We can improve.
We can take a short break.
We can improve from time to time, indeed.
We may improve our breaks too. This is Think Tech Talks, the SOEST Hour here on Monday, the 17th of February.
Yes.
We're talking about bringing climate change home with Kevin Hamilton and Yuqing Wang. We'll be right back after this break.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks on the SOEST Hour, bringing climate change home with Kevin Hamilton and Yuqing Wang, both of the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST. So Kevin, you were talking about you know, the boundaries of the science, I guess. So where do you come out on that? Now you have all this data that the model generated. It might have taken a while on a big computer, and now you can make certain conclusions about it. You can report on it. Where does that go, and what are these graphics on the table?
Okay, so we came prepared to show you a little bit of what we actually done for the Hawaii projection. So again, we're going to be looking at how well we can simulate present-day conditions against we're actually looking at 20-year averages, and what 20-year average temperature rainfall might look like in the future. And so this is clear. This is.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
You can see that.
So this shows the picture of the globe, and a little square there around Hawaii. That's where our sort of higher resolution model is embedded. But even simulating the details in that square is challenging. So we actually have 3 nested squares. We have a smaller square inside there where we have even higher resolution. And then finally over an individual island, particularly Maui we've done so far, we actually have a resolution of 1 kilometer, about 2/3 of a mile.
That's really small for this kind of modeling.
Yes, so again, it means more grid points and more computational burden. Okay, and so basically we're on the outside boundaries, and on the lower boundary, which is the sea surface, we're taking the results from global scale model projections that have been done other places. And in fact, we're actually basing it on
Yeah,
is that good?
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basing it on
Good, thank you.
on averages of other models. So we're not picking our friends' models. We're averaging over
Okay,
all
so
the
now
models that are there.
we styled this bringing climate change home, but
Right.
it looks like you have, you know, meteorological data there, humidity, temperature,
Right.
Wind, I don't know what geopotential is,
Right.
and sea level pressure.
Right.
What are those things, and how do they relate to climate change?
Okay. Well, those are the things that that drive the motions in the atmosphere, the pressures and of course the humidities involved in producing rain and clouds and so on. So we just have to specify all the things that determine the meteorological conditions. They have to be specified all the way around the boundary of our model, what goes at the surface all the way to the top. And then also we have to specify the lower boundaries. So over the ocean, we take the ocean temperatures from the global model.
At sea level, or
Yeah,
even
at the
into
ocean.
the ocean. Even.
Well, in our case, we're not ourselves trying to model what's happening in the ocean. We're just taking that from other models
Okay.
and giving it to the atmosphere. Okay, so that's how things are set up. And here's a projection. This is a future projection. This is the Big Island. So you're looking from the southwest. So this is Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. And the colors there are our projection of how much the average air temperature, surface air temperature, is going to warm. So you can see as you go up, our warming increases. So the amount of warming late 21st century versus present day goes up. At the sea level, it's around, well, it's about 2.3 degrees Celsius, so that's about 4 degrees Fahrenheit. At the summits, it's much larger, so it's up closer to 7 degrees.
This reflects
Celsius.
a warming
Or
of the
70
temperature
Fahrenheit.
around these topographies over what period of time?
So this is computed on the basis of a 20-year mean.
So
Okay,
over 20 years,
Yeah.
the darkest color is going to be the greatest increase in temperature.
Right. So this is the change over a century, but it's based on 20-year mean. So it means, day to day, of course, there'll be warm days and cold days as always, but on average, it's going to be about 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer on the summits if our calculations are correct.
That's a lot, isn't it?
That's a lot. Yeah. And in fact, we've actually looked at snow cover, which is another thing that comes out of our model. And today we find we get occasional snowstorms down to 11,000 feet in our model, which is realistic. By late 21st century, the snow is not totally gone, almost totally gone. So as a cultural phenomena, as a tourist phenomena, there will basically be no snow anymore.
No more skiing.
No more skiing. People have to explain why Mauna Kea is called Mauna Kea.
Nice is cold Mauna
It's the White Mountain.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. So, yes. So yeah. So it's going to be profound, and so snow is one thing, but ecosystems will be affected, and many other things. Again, I can talk about that later. But again, this is an example. The grid there is actually the grid of our model. So every one of those squares, we have a model point, and actually 26 of them, because we have 26 levels stacked up above.
So let me ask you, I don't know if this is part of the examination, but why is it that the higher points on the topography are having the greatest temperature changes?
Well, it's a very interesting phenomenon. We think it's very robust, and it's basically the way the large-scale atmosphere responds to the warming. So all the global models tend to produce more warming higher up in the lower atmosphere. So the first order, you're just seeing that warm air, in our case comes from the global model projections, sort of blowing across here and being intercepted. In addition, the Big Island is big enough that sort of local effects can be important. So the further you are away from the coast, the less constrained you are by what's happening at the ocean surface. So just on a large scale, you tend to get, in continents, you get more warming in the center of continents than at the boundaries, which are sort of held by the ocean. We're seeing a similar effect here. So that's part of it as well, sort of locally generated. But the biggest effect is just the change in the temperature structure in the lower atmosphere.
Now with the dots, so to speak, the points, the data points in this particular topographical map. How do you get the fact that a dot on the top of the mountain is going to be that much warmer over 20 years? I mean, what's telling you that dot's going to be that much warmer? So
again, this is the result of this very computationally demanding process we went through. We actually ran our model. So it has again, each one of these little squares. There's actually 26 points stacked up. We ran this, and of course there's only one island, right? So it's in the middle of a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And we updated, say, roughly every 30 seconds for 20 years.
But for example, you said that that inland, you have a different reaction than at the water's edge.
Right.
So is that built into the code, that rule?
That is not built in that form. What we give it is the basic physical equations. So we're trying to make we call it simulations. We're trying to simulate how the atmosphere would actually behave, this parallel atmosphere. And so this comes out from all the calculations. Then we go in and we interpret it and say, why is it warm? And we try to use our physical insight to explain that.
So you're building rules about how the world works.
We're putting in the very most basic rules, and the computer and the algorithms are coming up with these results.
That makes it pretty exciting.
It's very exciting, and of course you'll like to see a result that makes sense, right? If you go through this huge exercise, waste all the computer time, and get results you can't understand, then of course it's a bit disturbing.
But this teaches you.
This teaches us.
Looking at this particular chart teaches you.
Yeah. So again, without going through all, you might have a person with the right background might have guessed something like this, but to show this as a result, again, just as a consequence of the basic physics, is very, very nice.
It's confirmation.
Yeah.
Let's take one last short break here. That's Kevin Hamilton, Director of the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST, and Yuqing Wang, Professor at the Center. And we're here at Think Tech Talks and the SOEST Hour, talking about bringing climate change home. Come back to our last segment. I'd like to ask you guys your wish list about what you'd like to have and do, and in sort of advance into the future of the center and SOEST. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Okay, we're back. We're here on Think Tech Talks on the SOEST Hour, bringing climate change home with Kevin Hamilton and Yuqing Wang. What would you like to have? What's on your wish list? Where is this all going? Nothing is static. You guys know that better than anyone in the world. Everything changes. So where do you want to see this program go?
Yes. Well, there's across the whole range of subjects we're studying at IPRC, there are many interesting challenges. And basically, from our point of view, what we need are bright young people, or bright people. I shouldn't be ageist here, but in particular, if we can get young people who are really committed and have some new ideas, that helps. And then in terms of our base support of our operations, of course, one thing we have almost unlimited demand for is computer power. And in fact, there's some interesting developments. So to do the calculations I've shown here, we've actually had to scramble a lot. So there was a academic computer center on Maui. So it's sort of part of the Air Force Center.
High Performance Computer Center.
Yeah. And
do you have access to that or no?
So the current, so for a lot, yes, so
there must be a story.
Yes,
here.
there's a story. So for a couple of years, I guess, roughly that, the Air Force had part of their center outside their firewall. It made it very easy for academics to access, particularly at the University of Hawaii. And again, Senator Inouye deserves a lot of credit for that, along with an old friend of yours, I gather, Tak Sugimura.
Sure.
And
he ran it for a while, didn't he?
He ran it, yeah. And so we ran a lot of these calculations on that computer. Unfortunately, the university decided they didn't want to keep paying for that. They had different plans, I guess, and that was shut down in December 2012. However, the university is going to build their own facility. We have a new IT building that's just about ready to open on campus.
This is the David Lasner building?
Yes, yes, of course, I have to be very careful about David Lasner now that he's my president.
Interim
president, which at UH usually means interim for life. But,
it could be, yeah.
So as part of that project, there's money to fill the building with a data center, but also high performance computing. So we're hoping by next summer the university may have a high performance computing capability that we can access there. To finish these runs, we've actually been using Yuqing's connections in China. We've actually been running on Chinese supercomputers.
We need to know about that. How does that work? If you can talk about it.
Not some collaboration.
So we have.
Without any collaboration, we couldn't use computer in China.
So we're collaborating with people in China.
That's fabulous.
Computer. So if I had a wish list, it would be for a very powerful computer for our center. So we have our own local supercomputer, but we're talking about sort of a $250,000 investment there. The university's supercomputer will be a $2 million investment initially. But the computer at Jamstech was a $500 million investment, okay? So that's basically, the more we could scale up to world-class computing facilities, it would be a huge help for us.
Is it a question of quality or speed?
It is speed, but speed means not just how fast the individual processors are clicking, but how fast they communicate, how fast they can write out data to disk, and so on. So we need a world-class system.
Well, good. It sounds like you're on the way to that.
Yes, so we're certainly looking for support from the university, from the people who support the university, donors and legislators hopefully appreciate that if they can provide these kinds of world-class facilities to researchers, we can use it for stuff that's very relevant to Hawaii.
Just one point of curiosity. If you have the run of this modeling, when it's in the multi-terabytes, how do you transmit that to someone? I have trouble with just a few gigabytes. How do you transmit terabytes?
Right. So we have the same problem with our colleagues in Japan, and we've actually resorted to writing disks locally, physical disks, and bringing them.
Just shipping the disk physically.
Shipping, yep. And of course we have a lot of we have a lot of people going, including myself, going back and forth to Japan all the time, and we say, well, please fill up some disks with data and bring them back.
No, I think you got to do that because there's no other practical way to do it. Okay, the other thing now is, well, let me ask you the question, Yuqing. What's on your wish list? Do you have anything else that you want to add to Kevin's wish list?
I think probably the most important thing is to the Hawaiian local people and policy maker. And the climate change is really is currently going on, and is potentially becomes a very serious problem for the Hawaiian region. In particular, we know the hurricanes, for example. We currently have about one landfalling hurricane every 10 years. And we are affected by a hurricane every 3 years for the islands. Affecting, that means not necessarily landfalling.
But surf and
but
surf.
For surfing and also, yeah. So in the if the climate becomes warmer, then we may experience more hurricanes in the Central Pacific. And Hawaii is probably one of the regions we may suffer more severe tropical cyclones in the future.
Yeah, this is
That's
pretty
one
serious.
possibility, yes.
I mean, I walk out of my house every day,
Yeah.
and I look at the sun. Not lately, but I look at the sun. And I say, well, one day closer to a hurricane.
Yep, no, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So this may affect the policymaker and also is for industry, like the insurance company may raise the insurance costs.
Sure, everyone wants to know.
Right.
And you guys will have the best data on knowing, at least within bounds. So I guess that's the bottom line, is that this information is going to be very relevant to anyone interested in climate change, and ultimately we are all going to be very interested in climate change. But right now, you make it available to academics, you make it available to the government, you make it available to Think Tech Hawaii, you make it available to industry,
Yeah.
right? And this is a great contribution you make to the community. It's consistent with Tom Apple's view of the world, that the university should help the community.
So Tom Apple says research that matters, and this definitely matters. And in fact, we have a very nice relation with East-West Center, and a particular project which is taking our results for Maui and giving them to hydrologists. We're looking at the groundwater, future groundwater. But at East-West Center, they're interacting very strongly with stakeholders on Maui and trying to make sure that this information gets into their planning.
There's really no place in the community that isn't going to need this, want this. And my prediction for you, Kevin, is that soon enough they'll be knocking at your door on a regular basis, much more than now, as we go forward. Anyway, we're out of time. This has been Think Tech Talks, the SOEST Hour, bringing climate change home. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but it's a big topic.
Yep.
Kevin Hamilton, Director of the International Pacific Research Center at SOEST, and Yuqing Wang, a professor from whom you can take classes anytime at the International Pacific Research. In fact, you can take them from both. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, yes.
Aloha.
Aloha.